Hello.
Okay. You ladies ready?
Yeah. So give me your best shot. But yeah, I guess I could do it that way. Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the August 1st, 2024 regular Planning Commission hearing. I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's like the Olympics.
All right. Ariana, report on posting the agenda and roll call, please.
The agenda was posted on Wednesday, July 25th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Roll call. Commissioner Ellie?
Present.
Commissioner Leongard? Absent. Commissioner Lewis?
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Here.
Commissioner Valdez?
Here.
Vice Chair Kushner?
Here.
Chair Bondo?
Here.
Then just as a reminder to make sure you turn on your mics when speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Ariana, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda?
There are no speakers.
All right. We're going to close public comment. Consent agenda 5.1, July 11, 2024 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Commissioners, any questions, comments, concerns? Floor is open for a motion.
I move the minutes be approved as written.
I second.
Roll call. Commissioner
please.
Ellie?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Yes.
Commissioner Valdez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kushner?
Yes.
Chair Bondo?
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to public hearing. There are no items for public hearing today. 7.1, new business. Planning Commission review of a resolution of the City Council to the City Council of Gilroy requesting the allocation of fiscal year 2025 Transportation Development Act Article 3 pedestrian bicycle project funding from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Hiba.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Commission members. I'm Hiba El-Gindi, Public Works Director. Nice to meet you as well. Thank you. Yes. Well, I've been with the city for close to 6 months now, and I'm happy to present to you tonight, finally. So this agenda item is requesting the Commission's consideration and recommending to City Council our request from MTC for Transportation Development Act Article 3 funding for the fiscal year 25 citywide curb ramp projects. So the TDA3 grant provides annual funding for bicycle and pedestrian projects, which requires consideration by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Body and Council approval. Our request this year for fiscal year 25 is for $240,000. That's including what was left over from last fiscal year. And anything that would not be used would not be lost, would simply be accumulated for the following year. We identified 24 locations to be funded by the TDA3 funds. And the prioritization is based on a number of factors. For example, on school routes and major traffic generators that are being used. We prioritize locations that are missing curb ramps. We have deficient curb ramps in many locations that need replacement, but we're currently tackling the locations that are missing curb ramps altogether. The funding, as I mentioned, is in the amount of $240,000. But I should mention that the 24 curb ramps, we will probably be building more than double that amount because we have other sources of funds, including CDBG funds, gas tax, and vehicle registration funds. But what's before you today is the ones that would be funded by TDA 3. These are the locations that are identified, and we try to identify locations in different neighborhoods of the city. For example, the first few locations are school routes towards Brownell Middle School. The following locations are in the vicinity of Arrobal elementary schools. The staff recommendation to the Commission is to receive the staff report, provide feedback, and to recommend to City Council their approval and adoption of the resolution that was attached as part of your packet for approving the TDA 3 grant funding request from MTC in the amount of $240,000 for fiscal year 25 citywide curb ramp project. And that concludes my short presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Eba.
Thank you. I just have one quick question. The money that you said that there was money that had been carried over from last year?
Yes.
Was the project that money was earmarked for, was that project complete and there were leftover funds, or was the project not completed?
Yes, the project was completed. It's just that the bid that the city received was much lower than what was originally estimated. That's why. But for this fiscal year, we will actually have a much longer list, more significant list, and we will build as much as we can using the available funds.
Thank you.
These are usually public works projects, correct? Yes. And so with a public works project, you bid it and you give it to the lowest responsible bidder, and then they usually have a 10 to 15% contingency, and a lot of times you don't get into the contingency, and so then it's excess. But the contingency is there in case they dig up the road and they find, a big rock, or they find stuff that was unforeseen, and so those are used for the change orders. So a lot of times, not a lot of times, but many times on public works contracts, there is leftover money, and it's just because there's that built-in contingency.
Yes, that's correct.
So I had a question, and I don't know if this might require someone with more historical knowledge, this is really about my education so that I understand. We did go over the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 24 to 28, and there were project improvements in there. Some of them showed that they were funded. The annual citywide curb ramp project for 24 was funded, and it was funded at $240,000. So is this sort of like we're doing this every year? Because I didn't see this for 2025 inside our CIP, so I didn't.
Well, this is for 25.
Okay.
The CIP, the 5-year CIP, I identified the projects
Yes.
in each and every
Okay,
year.
so that little graph on the bottom where it has each year. Okay, Thank you. That makes sense.
Yes, last year it had 220,000 of TDA funds plus 20,000 of gas tax. But we have about 107,000 left over that we're including in this year's. But our allocation of the TDA was less for this coming fiscal year. That's why we have 240,000,
Nice.
including the leftover.
Wow. Okay, thank you. And then one final question. So it was saying that we need to be, and I'm going by memory, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, that we need to be ready to start this project by the end of this month?
It's going to be considered by City Council on August 5th. And if approved, we will apply for receiving the funds from MTC. The bidding process in itself takes about a couple of months. So we would be ready to go out for bids once we get the authorization. But we have to post it for 2 to 3 weeks at least. And after we receive the bids, we evaluate them, select the one that's consistent with the work scope and has the lowest bidding amount. And then we go into a contract. And that also has to be approved by City Council.
Okay.
So the process itself take about a couple of months.
Okay, so when, I just pulled it up, so I have the right verbiage. So when it says, the TDA Article 3 project must be ready to implement within 1 year of the application cycle, which closes this month. So we have a whole year from this month.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right. Commissioners, any discussion? Floor is open. I'll go ahead and make the motion that we recommend to City Council and adopt a resolution to approve the Transportation Development Act Article 3 grant funding request to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission for fiscal year 2025.
I second. I'll second. Oh.
The first and the second.
Can I get confirmation on the second?
Vice Chair.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Ellie,
Yes.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
Commissioner Valdez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kushner,
Yes.
Chair Bondo.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.
All right, 7.2, Planning Commissioner Training, Complete Streets.
So you have me for this item as well. And the presentation really has a lot of examples and illustrations to start our conversation. And if you're interested in more details, for example, specifications of certain devices, I'll be happy to come back and I'll be happy to provide more details. This is more a general presentation. As you can see from this illustration, a complete street takes into account all street users, including pedestrians and accessibility requirements, transit movements and access, bicycle movements, parking, safe parking, and including short and long-term parking and loading to serve adjacent land uses. So it takes into account all needs. So what is a complete street? It is the practice of considering the mobility needs of all roadway users, including people who walk, cycle, scoot, ride transit, and drive in a safe and equitable manner. So we take into account, for example, accessibility, safety. We serve our community in an equitable manner through the street design. Doesn't matter what's their age, what's their socioeconomic needs. We serve them regardless of what travel mode they use. Why complete streets? A complete streets approach is different from a traditional transportation approach. The traditional transportation planning was designed to move vehicles, not people, through our communities. In contrast, a complete streets approach prioritizes the movements of people, changes behavior rather than forgives behavior, designs for slower, safer speeds, and encourages walking, cycling, rolling, and riding public transit. The complete streets is really dependent on the community it serves. So the design that you would see in an urban area is different than a suburban or rural area. And this photo shows an example of a new senior center on this side of the road and a bus stop that was established to serve the senior center, but there is no safe crossing of the roadway, safe and controlled crossing. And at the bus stop itself is not accessible or have sufficient space for the community members to wait and safely use the bus. The way we establish speed limits now, although there are recent laws that allow us to reduce speed limits in school areas, senior housing areas, so there are more flexible approach to some extent. But the standard approach is to conduct speed survey and based on the 85th percentile. The 85th percentile speed is the speed at or below which 85% of the motorists travel. So based on that 85th percentile speed, we establish the speed limit within 5 miles per hour range of that speed. So if the street, let's say, is wide, has wide lanes, not too much traffic, and actually the speed surveys are supposed to be done at mid-block locations so that they wouldn't be impacted by a signal or a stop sign. They wouldn't be impacted by the surrounding conditions. It's supposed to show the flow, the free flow of traffic. So that's an approach that doesn't necessarily encourage slowing down. Some streets, more or less arterials, major collectors, have high speed limits that's not pedestrian and bicycle friendly. The faster cars drive, the longer distance they need to stop. For example, a car driving at 40 miles per hour would need about 350 feet to stop. Once the driver realizes there is a hazard, it takes 350 feet to stop. While for 20 miles per hour driving speed, for example, it only takes 110 feet to stop. So there is a significant difference. This is a well-known figure in our field, that there is a 10% chance of fatal collision for a pedestrian if the car is driving at 20 miles per hour, while there is 80% chance of fatality if the car is driving at 40 miles per hour. So the chance of surviving a collision diminishes as the speed increases. This is a friend, an engineering consultant, who is actually not small. That's why I'm saying Joe is not small, cars are big. So you can imagine the visibility of children, given the size of vehicles that we drive today. So what do we do? we improve the travel options from different aspects through safe and convenient parking, short and long-term parking, parking for bicycles, by using technology and connectivity to obtain real-time information about transit services, for example, by providing priority access for pedestrians and cyclists, by providing amenities such as street furniture and lighting, and also by providing transit and trip-making services. So the approach to building a complete street really covers all modes of travel on the street through various aspects of the design. These examples, actually, most of them are nearby. These 3 photos are in Sunnyvale. And it shows some examples of better accommodating pedestrians through the provision of wider sidewalks, through connecting a parking structure with commercial area where Target is in the downtown area. This is Murphy Avenue, and there are a significant amount of street furniture that serves the adjacent restaurants. And actually, they close this street on weekends. This is in Santa Monica, and that photo was taken during COVID. So you can see the stores boarded up, and they're not open to the public, yet the streets themselves are still serving the community as a means for them to get out and walk and breathe fresh air. Improving the next few slides will talk about the individual mode. For example, this one about improving roadway comfort for cyclists, providing designated bike lanes and separating it from the pedestrian facilities. This example here shows a Class 4 physically separated bicycle facility, whether it's a one-way bike lane or a two-way cycle track, as this example. This bike lane is another example of a buffered bike lane. So it's still a Class 2, but it's separated from the auto traffic lanes through pavement marking. And in this case, actually, the parking is on the outside to further separate cyclists from the moving auto traffic. This is another example at intersections to better accommodate bicycle stopping. These photos shows examples of improved accessibility and connectivity with transit. And we have our mobility hub where we have the Caltrain station and the VTA buses in Gilroy. So similar concepts in other jurisdictions with wayfinding signs. This is also in Sunnyvale. There is underground parking that connects with pedestrian areas at the top and with bus services. And this photo is intended to show accessibility to the bus itself and accommodation of bicycles. And it's quite important to improve the sense of safety and comfort, especially for seniors, for school-age kids. It's important that we provide street furniture and lighting, for example. And these are examples of trails which would be crucial for given our population with Morgan Hill, we're actually considered for MTC as a rural area. So in our case, it's important to provide lighting for trails, for example, to increase their use. This shows street furniture, arts, to better accommodate the street users. This is an example of a pedestrian mall and how the community can gather out on the street. These are other examples, and whether it's an overcrossing for pedestrians and cyclists overcrossing a freeway, or an example from downtown Los Angeles where it has street furniture and wide sidewalks to better serve pedestrians that are physically separated from auto traffic. These examples are actually in Sunnyvale. How can we build pedestrian and bicycle projects? There is a significant amount of grant programs that now qualifies, more so than in past years. And we tackle them actually. I will be reaching out and at the next month's agenda a staff report on the 2 ATP applications that we submitted because we will be needing to follow up with MTC and obtain your feedback on the applications, whether you're in support or not. So there are various grant programs that assist us in building complete street concepts. We can also leverage other projects, and I'm including here storm drain projects as an example that we can leverage. This is a project that we built in Culver City, actually, and this is where a storm drain basin at that location. It's a two-way cycle track. These are other examples. This photo, and I apologize if it's kind of fuzzy, this is a stormwater treatment project that is now under Culver Boulevard. It's quite large facility that serves the whole city. The roadway now is much wider once this area has been filled. And on top now there is landscaping, a two-way bike and ped facility, arts. We even personalize it because a co-worker passed who was responsible for the art pieces in the project, passed during the project developments. And this is her plaque. I apologize. I shouldn't have included that picture. Traffic calming projects, and the City of Gilroy has an annual traffic calming program, which is typically established in residential areas along school routes. And these photos show examples of physical traffic calming. Traffic calming could also be established through signage, pavement marking, like narrowing down travel lanes, for example, to help slow down auto traffic. These photos are showing here, for example, is a flat top speed hump for enhanced visibility of the pedestrians crossing. These are narrowing devices at intersections, chokers. These are entry treatment and center median that could be used at intersections to slow down traffic as they access the various intersection legs, and also to provide safety for pedestrian movements at the crossing. This is a small traffic circle example. We could also have significantly larger roundabouts, and the city of Gilroy has a number of roundabouts in the Glen Loma area. And this shows limiting auto traffic movements, whether half or full street closure, diverters. This is just one example of how to establish that. I also wanted to include examples of protected intersections, which could be implemented using permanent devices, and this is an example. By extending the sidewalks, narrowing the intersections, separating the bicycle from the pedestrian from the auto traffic movements. That's including separations at the crossings of the different intersection legs. We could also use temporary devices, and we call that quick build. These two photos are from downtown the city of San Jose, using bollards and separating the bike and ped movements with relatively cheap devices and pavement marking. So what's quick builds? Quick builds provide safe and protected movements of the various modes of travel using temporary devices such as delineators. So here you could see that this is a transit lane, a bus lane, while these are the bike lanes and the sidewalks, of course. And this parking is for bicycles and scooters. And actually, these narrowing devices, rather than extending the sidewalk and the cost of rebuilding the corners, changing the drainage, moving utilities, this is a relatively cheap way of building the narrowing device. And we actually use volunteers from the community for this implementation. We did it in the middle of the night, so that would be safer for the volunteers. These are additional examples of quick build projects. And the idea is to encourage the community to really use their community streets. They're not just intended for cars. Here with the bus lane, we extended the sidewalk with a wooden base at the same level of the sidewalk, and provides accessibility at the bus stop for the users to safely access the bus. This is an example of a pedestrian mall, which is permanent implementation, but the furnishings itself changes. Even the steps going up to the stores on the second level are occasionally used for events as a theater, like the lighting of the Christmas tree, whenever there are shows in downtown Culver City. It's being used as an open theater. The branding and wayfinding signs, and I included an example of the wayfinding signs in Gilroy, and we will be implementing more. For example, the Gourmet Alley project will have wayfinding signs for pedestrians and cyclists. The visioning station, the visioning study for the Caltrain station will also have associated improvements on the public roads, including wayfinding signs. The wayfinding signs could also identify land uses, like major traffic generators. It could identify where parking lots or garages are available. If using ITS technologies, it can even identify how many spaces can be available so that people wouldn't drive around unnecessarily. We recently resurfaced the Railroad Alley, and we will be establishing Railroad Alley as a bike boulevard. So you will be seeing example of signage similar to this on Railroad Alley. This is an example from Los Angeles. It's quite important that we remain flexible and listen to the community. The whole objective is to design streets that meet the needs of the community. From one area to another could be different. And as I mentioned, urban versus rural. So the design would vary, but no matter what, the streets design need to meet what the community is looking for to serve their transportation needs and other even societal needs. If they need to be out there and find a space to sit down and talk to one another. There are many sources now available for complete streets. NACTO, for example, has a number of manuals on pedestrian improvements, bicycle improvements, complete streets. This is an example from the MUTCD that takes into account complete street designs and traffic control devices associated with that, AASHTO, and various manuals that are now available for us. And with that, I will stop talking, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a question for you. So who does the actual design or implement, well, obviously implementation of ideas would come to Public Works, but who, and I would imagine approval goes through City Council, but who actually puts this together as far as new package of new ideas?
It depends on the scale of the project. We could do it in-house. We definitely have the expertise, or it could be done by external consultants. So it depends on the scale of the project.
So do you have a suggestion box or something to get?
Well, the suggestion box is so large, right? Because a street may serve transit traffic, but another street wouldn't. So there are certain accommodations for certain modes of travel. It depends on the area and the community's need. But if there is the possibility, if you have ideas or specific locations and you'd like to sit down and discuss it, we're more than available and we'll be happy to discuss it with you. Because it comes with experience, right? It's not that we can grab one of these manuals and it's going to give us all the solutions. That's not how it works.
Well, I grew up in Germany, and there's just everything is geared towards bicycles and foot traffic, and there are a lot of these traffic calming devices. And it's, you know, as a driver of a vehicle, it's a little annoying because it really slows you down, because it brings you down to like a single lane where you have to kind of go around planter boxes and whatnot. And so but they're typically beautiful, and they do definitely convey a sense of safety as a pedestrian. Because I know there's several areas in Gilroy where, you know, down by the outlets, I don't remember what the name of the street was, that goes out to Home Depot, and it's 2 lanes in both directions, and the cars are going extremely fast, to the point where, with a friend of mine, we were going to go from this section of the center all the way over to the other side, and I said, you know, I'm not comfortable going across because I can't walk very fast. And so we literally got back in the car and drove ourselves over to the other side, because there is no median in the middle where you can, like you mentioned earlier, right, where you can stop and be safe before you do the next leg of that, crossing that street. So,
Well,
because while we were standing there, the cars were just racing by, and I said, I'm just not, I don't feel safe
Yes,
crossing the street.
I understand. I'm going to give you a little bit of a story first, and then I'll answer your comment. I did my master thesis more than 20 years ago on traffic calming after I visited Germany and Holland. So it influenced me personally.
Yeah.
But traffic calming in general is implemented in residential areas, in areas where it's intended to serve pedestrians, cyclists, and low-moving traffic. There are different classifications of the roadway. Local, arterial, collector. So every street serves a certain purpose. Like arterials, for example, we cannot necessarily implement traffic calming on an arterial that connects to the freeway because it's intended to serve high volume of traffic and as a connection of neighborhoods to the freeway network. But with that being said, let's say we have a location for pedestrian crossing that's not safe. There are measures that could be implemented to provide a safer crossing, like a hawk signal, for example, with enhanced pavement marking. So it wouldn't necessarily stop traffic all the time, but it could be activated by pedestrians to stop the traffic while pedestrians are crossing. So there are means to improve safety even on major corridors.
Thank you.
So wouldn't there be, like if there was an area in Gilroy identified, like we need to do something, maybe it's out by the outlets, for example, and the city felt that it was necessary to look into this, wouldn't there be significant community input to the design and the measures that could be implemented and things like that prior to just creating the solution?
Yes, absolutely. And if it's addressed on an area-wide basis, I have to be realistic and open with you. A situation like that is likely to take time, right? To seek grant funding, for example, it has to be supported by the collision statistics. If we have high collision rates, it would increase our chances in getting grant. But if not, and it's a sense of safety, more or less, or near misses, then we would need to fund it some other way. And there is an approval process to even get the funding. So beside the public hearings, a situation like that will also involve community meetings. And even smaller scale plans for residential communities, not the outlet area. Our traffic calming policy has a petition requirement to petition the affected community members. It has requirements to meet certain, like specific traffic volume, meeting specific traffic speeds, and so forth. With that being said, even if the requirements are not necessarily met, but the community is looking for certain improvements, we will try to tackle those.
Thank you.
You had a question for you. Maybe I'm just blind in Gilroy. I drive all the streets all the time, and I'm not used to them. Can you give some examples? Because a lot of these images look great, but I don't see this in Gilroy. Can you give some examples of some of these things? Improved comfort for bicyclists, improved accessibility. Where do we see this here in town?
What I cannot necessarily see in Gilroy is the bus lanes, because we don't have the demand currently, maybe at some point in the future on certain corridors, but we don't have the frequency of transit services that would warrant dedicating travel lanes to the bus service. I would impact everybody else and serve buses that comes once every hour. But pretty much the majority of what you see in these photos are applicable to Gilroy. for pedestrian improvements, intersection improvements, bicycle improvements. So they are applicable.
So the follow-up to that is, are there any projects in the pipeline to upgrade some of these streets and roads that currently don't meet the Complete Streets guidelines?
Yes. And in the next meeting, the staff report that will be coming before you, it's basically covering a couple of applications to the ATP. One, to develop a citywide bicycle and pedestrian action plan, because the trail plan that we have is from 2005, and it's not really covering the street network. So we're hoping to get funding to develop that plan, which would identify, and it's an action plan, which identifies specific improvements with some concepts that we can build on. The second application is for Monterey Road, for the whole stretch of Monterey Road throughout the city, which is 4.4 miles. We identified the segments that are missing sidewalks, missing bike lanes. Monterey Road in the general plan is designated as a bike route, whether it's a Class 2 or Class 3 in the downtown area for sharing the road. But the whole stretch of Monterey is identified as a bike route. And that's an expensive plan. It's over $20 million to really address all the improvements. If we don't get the grant, we will probably piece it to be able to fund it gradually, starting with the locations that serves the most drivers, bicycles, pedestrians, the adjacent land uses. So there are many roadways that need help, to answer your question.
So if I could build upon that question. So I ride my bike a lot, and I'm hoping maybe 6th Street will be reconsidered in this new plan, because we do have a dedicated bike lane there, but it's impacted by parked cars, and I understand that that road's only so wide, right? But it would be nice to have some of our bike lanes reevaluated, see what could be done there to make them a little bit more usable. And maybe there's not much. Maybe it's repaving, painting to make them more clear. But it would be wonderful for us bicyclists.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I understand. I will note that down. But just to use another example, yes, that will definitely be looked at for all bike network. But for example, for Monterey Road, even the segments that we currently have bike lanes, the recommendation is to restripe it and provide buffered bike lanes. So it's still a Class 2, and it's consistent with the general plan. But we will provide some separation between the bike lanes from the auto traffic.
And would those buffers be solid buffers, or?
No, these are typically. I'm sorry, I'm looking for a specific picture. They are striped. I am pretty sure I had a picture here.
And then I have one
here
final
it is.
question after. Right there.
It's this type of striping. The buffer wouldn't necessarily be that wide, but that's the accurate striping, with the stripe going upward where the auto movement is.
Is it expensive to put bollards along that striped area to actually prevent cars then from parking and
It's not just about the expense. Like in San Jose, we were able to install the delineators because San Jose has 5-foot sweepers that were previously just used for sidewalks. But now they are being used for cleaning the bike lanes as well. Gilroy doesn't have those narrow street sweepers. And it wouldn't be a priority because we have all the equipment. Like we would try to purchase the equipments we're missing or are quite old before we think about the more luxury items.
Okay.
So, just out of curiosity, I love to walk along the levee and take my grandkids on their bikes and things like that. And it's expanding throughout the city, right? Would those be considered, part of this type of a project, where it's accessibility for walking and cycling and I'm assuming there's going to be some type of a plan to eventually kind of connect them all together so that they serve a purpose. You can get literally from point A to point B using those resources?
Yes. Trails are definitely part of the network. Even if they are currently dirt trails, they are still identified because ultimately we want an interconnected grid, right, throughout the city. So whenever there are opportunities like that, they are incorporated within the network, and eventually it could be resurfaced.
Right, because some of them, do take you from neighborhoods to schools,
Yes.
things like that. And to me, if you're completely away from vehicle traffic, I would assume you're much safer.
Yes.
Especially for kids as they're going to school and back.
Yes, and we have a trail project in our CIP that we just got a grant to cover the design, and we're pursuing a grant for the construction. So it's definitely part of our CIP.
Thank you.
I had two questions now. So Commissioner Kushner asked about, can the barriers, and you were talking about the street sweepers to fit. I would assume that we're taking into consideration when we're designing these changes, if possible, that when we get those, hopefully when we get those types of sweepers, then we can modify what we have done to put in physical barriers and things like that. So it wouldn't be a huge uplift or redesign to make additions to those environments.
And no, it wouldn't. It wouldn't, because the delineators would be installed, the already existing at the time buffers. And I should mention, I should have been clearer that we're not excluding the idea of providing Class 4 facility altogether. For example, as part of the US 11152 interchange improvements that we just started the environmental review period. This is a project led by VTA, though. But for example, it has a two-way cycle track that is, and which is like similar to this type of arrangement because it's wide enough for us to maintain. But it will be physically separated, whether with delineators or some other device from the auto traffic.
I used to commute down Lawrence Expressway, and they drive very fast on that. I ended up moving to surface side streets because of it. It would have been very nice to have the dividers. The second question is, I cannot remember. I think it's one of the large events that they have, the coalitions, that they have bicycle coalitions every year, symposiums. I went to one of those, and I've been reading the book that they provided, and one of the statistics that they gave was that men generally commute on their bicycles. Pardon me. Women generally use their bicycles to run errands.
Yes.
So, is that sort of statistic being thought about with, I know we require bicycle lock cages or places to lock your bikes everywhere, but, downtown and, all those, to run errands, grocery shopping, those sorts of things as well. Because, Monterey is sort of a thoroughfare.
Yes, and actually the improvements, if you look at the statistics, improvements to safety conditions, you would find that it increases cycling and walking mostly by women and by younger generations, by children. There is also increase in cycling by older men, but not to the same extent. So in a way, it's serving definitely seniors, women, and children that are more sensitive to safety conditions or are more vulnerable to roadway conditions. And you had a second part for your comment I wanted to address.
Monterey is more of a thoroughfare. Was that it?
Yes, and we're planning to address Monterey. That's not it. I wanted to have to comment, but yeah, I
Thank
lost
you.
it now.
That's going to come back the next time in the next meeting. You're going to bring these specific.
Yes, and I will include in the presentation general informations on the areas that need the most help. That's, yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Any more questions for anybody? Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I apologize. I will not remain for the rest of the meeting. I need to pick up my daughter from the airport, but it's really nice to be with you today. Thank you.
All right. 8.0, informational items, Planning Division staff approvals, and I think we had none. Correct. Planning Division report. Cindy.
Yeah, so a couple things. You should have received an email late this afternoon letting you know that the environmental notice of intent to adopt a mitigated negative declaration for the Renfu Village Villa development is starting tomorrow. So I sent you a link to the website for that information. So there's an initial study and a number of appendices that you can take a look at. And I anticipate that project will probably come to you in October. It could be November, but probably October. And that's a tentative map and a zoning map amendment to bring it into conformance with our general plan. Also, we're getting close to bringing you draft sections of the zoning code. And we're planning on tackling that in sections because it's a pretty big document. So once we have some dates and the structure for that, I'll let you all know. Yeah, so it will be a lot of work and review, but it's exciting. It's like a once in a 2-decade opportunity. So some of you we're part of Gilroy Leadership, so this next Friday we're hosting Government Day. So that's an annual event. If you don't know what Gilroy Leadership is, Chair Bernal or Commissioner Valdez can tell you all about it. And then I think Sharon may have announced at the last meeting, it was just fresh news that we got our grant for the Climate Action Plan and VMT policy. Yeah, so that happened right around the same time as the meeting. So we'll be sending out an RFP later this year. That's going to be a 2-year process. It'll involve some community outreach, and it will eventually come to the commission.
Question about the CAP. So the CAP, I don't know the dates, but a while ago that there was a CAP that was produced and never completed. So we created a tentative one. Is it building off of that at all? Or?
So the guidelines that came out of that effort went into the general plan, and yes, that will be something that the consultants will definitely be considering.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's it for me.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment. I seen the press release for the lawsuit that came out. Sore subject.
315 Los Angeles.
It's
The builder's remedy. They're moving forward with it. No.
It's just, they're just asserting the builder's remedy on that site.
Any questions for Cindy? No? All right. Assistant City Attorney report.
Nothing, just, we did get sued under the builder's remedy, so, and we're still, evaluating the whole thing. So, that's it for me.
Nice. With that, at the 60-minute mark, I am adjourning the meeting to September 5th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.